Okay, so FTP usually which is used for file transferring file from one host to another host. In order to for the user to access the remote account, the user must provide the user identification and the password. After providing this authorization information, the user can transfer the file from the local file to the remote file systems and vice versa. So the user first provide the host name, that is a remote host, causing the FTP client process in the local host to establish a TCP connection with the FTP server process in the remote host. So the user, here user at the host, see that, provide the user identification and the password which are sent over the TCP connection as a part of FTP command. Okay, once the server has authorized the user copies one or more files stored in the local file system. See here, remote file system and local file system is there, right? So local file system, that is near the client, right? That is whatever the file that is stored in the local file system into the remote file systems and vice versa. So the FTP uses two parallel TCP connection to transfer a file. One control connection, another one is data connections. So the control connections is used for sending a control information between the two host information, such as user identification, password, commands to change the remote directory, put, get files, all those things. So the data connections is used to actually send a file. See, from the diagram, you can see that, right? FTP connections. Now we have two, I told, separate control as well as data connection for a file transfer things, right? Next, you can see the TCP control connection port number is 21 and the TCP data connection, the server port number is 20. Okay, when a user starts FTP session with the remote host, the client side on the FTP, that is a user, first initiate the control TCP connection with the server side, that is a remote host, on the server port number, that number is 21. So the client side of the FTP send the user identification and the password over these control connections. So the client side of the FTP also sent over the control connections command to change the remote directory. So when the server side receives a file command for the file transfer over the control connections, either to or from the remote host, the server side initiates a TCP data connection to the client side. Okay, so the FTP sends exactly one file over the data connection and then closes the data connections. If during the same session the user wants to transfer another file, FTP open one more data connection at the port number 20 and again he will send and again it will be closed. Thus, with the FTP, control connection remains open throughout the duration of the user session, but new data connection is created for each file transferred within the session by making use of port number 20. So the data connection is non-persistent. Throughout the session, FTP server must maintain a state about the user. In particularly, server must associate the control connection with the specified user account and the server must keep track of user current directory as the user wonders about the remote directory tree. So now we will see some of the commands associated with the FTP. The commands are user, that is username. If you type capital user, that is a username. Usually the user to send the user identification to the server. Next, pass, that is nothing but password. So user to send the user password to the server. Next, list, list. So it is used to ask the server to send back a list of all the files in the current remote directory. The list of files are sent over new or non-persistent data connection rather than the control TCP connections. Then we have RETR with the file name. So which is used to retrieve a file from the current directory of the remote host. So this command causes the remote host to initiate a data connection and to send the requested file over the data connections. Next is STOR with the file name, that is store file into the current directory of the remote host. So each command followed by a reply sent from the server to client. So the replies are 3-digit numbers. So usually like our HTTP, the 3-digit numbers are 331, means user okay. Password is required. 125, that 3-digit represents the data connection is open. Data transfer is starting. Then 425 means cannot open the data connection. It's error. 452 is a error writing file, like that. So these are the sample written codes with respect to FTP command and the responses.